All right, we're just going to jump right into it. Mark Passio, the Natural Law Seminar, Part 10. I tried to get to this last Tuesday, and it just didn't work out. That's okay, I hope. The information will still be as good a week later. Pretty sure.
Where we left off, I was talking about brain structure and human behavior and how these two things are completely interrelated. Brain health plays a critical role in human behavior, so it is extremely important for human beings to become familiar with the brain's basic structure and function. Now, I'm not telling you that this is the totality of neuroscience, what I'm going to show you here today. I'm saying that this is the basics. It's the essence of how the brain structure works. So this is part of understanding the physiological aspects of how consciousness works, all right? So there's three main complexes, structures, that comprise the total human brain. The first is the R complex, or the reptilian brain. So this part of the brain, the R complex, or the reptilian brain. So this part of the brain facilitates basic survival functions. It's the part of the brain that goes to work and becomes active when we're in what's called fight or flight mode, okay? When survival is at stake. It also controls basic motor functions and respiration, okay? The second part of the brain is above the R complex. This is called the limbic system. It's also known as the mammal brain, the mammalian brain. This part of the brain facilitates human emotions, and it makes human emotion possible to be felt in the physiology. It does this by releasing what's known as neuropeptides into the bloodstream through different glands that comprise the limbic brain, or what's called the midbrain also. So the final part of the brain, the highest structure structurally, and the newest part of the brain evolutionarily, it's called the neocortex. Now really what this part of the brain is really called is the telencephalon. That's what we traditionally think of as the gray matter of the brain, okay, with the hemispheres, okay? The neocortex is where all of the actual electrochemical activity that comprises our human modes of thought takes place, and that's in the outer shell of the telencephalon, which is known as the neocortex. So this part of the brain actually facilitates all human functions of thought, what we consider the things in thought that make us a human being and separate us from the animal kingdom. Higher thought functions, logic, intuition, creativity, okay? So we'll break down these parts of the brain and give you some visual understanding of them. So down here, down here is the reptilian brain. It's comprised of the brain stem right here, and this part of the brain is called the cerebellum, okay? These two components together essentially comprise the R complex. So again, the R complex is the lowest consciousness part of the brain. We don't do any thinking with this part of the brain. It's the reactive part of the brain. It reacts to stimulus. It's the stimulus response mechanism. Now up here in this middle part of the brain, these are all the different glands like the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the pituitary and pineal glands, etc., that comprise the midbrain or the limbic system. All human emotions are facilitated, are made possible by this part of the brain, okay? So this part of the brain, if it wasn't working properly, you would not be able to experience a normal range of human emotions. This is part of what psychopathy is. Psychopaths, this part of the brain is not functioning properly, whether it be from a birth disorder or whether it be from conditions over one's life that if someone has stayed in chronically has numbed out this part of the brain and it is not functioning properly anymore, so the person's not actually experiencing a normal range of emotions. This part of the brain, which again is the telencephalon, this gray matter part with all of the grooves, etc. That's the neocortex. The neocortex is the outer casing, basically, of the telencephalon, the higher brain. It's the human brain, okay? Neo means new, so it's the newest part of the brain structure as far as evolutionary development of the human being goes. So this part of the brain facilitates all higher order thinking. Now, what you have to understand about the telencephalon, or the hemispheres of the brain, is that they're first of all bilaterally symmetrical, and they generally control different functions of thought. Now, I'm not telling you it's 100%. Neuroscience is more complicated than that, okay? But in general, the left part, the left hemisphere of the brain, is what governs logic, analytical thought, and scientific and mathematical thinking, and also linear thought processes, okay? Physical world tasks and details, being able to break things down and analyze them, all right? So this is taking things apart, breaking them down into smaller components, and analyzing the pieces. That's what the left brain does. You could look at it as a series processor. Okay, it has to go into this part first, then here, and then we could spit out the output. A linear process, like a series processor. Okay, the right side of the brain, the right hemisphere, governs or generally facilitates and makes possible human creativity, our emotional makeup, okay, all the emotional dynamics of the human being, holistic thought, being able to see the big picture thinking, pattern recognition, and then things like compassion, nurturing, care, okay? Ethics to a large extent. And I would say ethical thinking comes from a balance between the two, as we're going to get into. Now, if this left part of the brain here becomes chronically dominant, the masculine part of the brain, and again, I'm putting these symbols here. This is an ancient archetypal symbol called the blade. It's a simple upward-pointing triangle. And this downward-pointing triangle is another ancient archetypal symbol that was referred to in the ancient world as the chalice, the cup, etc. Okay? And this was a rudimentary phallic symbol, and this was a rudimentary womb symbol, representing the male and the female, or the masculine and feminine, more accurately, components of the consciousness. The idea is to keep a balance between these two. When we have a balance between the two, that's when we're operating on all cylinders, so to speak. That's when real consciousness and pattern recognition is developed. And that's when real morality and ethical considerations are also created within the personality, within the being. If this part of the brain is...
I think that's a little telling. It's the whole symbolism as holding deeper meaning than, let's say, popular culture interprets it. Because I would argue that balance isn't what people see when that symbol is displayed. So I just think it's interesting because from the very beginning tried to explain or tried to point out the symbolism means a lot more to the people wielding it than those seeing it. And I find that incredibly interesting and telling, that the truth of the matter has been, obfuscated. I think obfuscated? I'm not good at that word. But hidden from us. But let's say the political implications, through the roof in pop culture. But if, balance and other meanings were implied to these things, maybe they wouldn't carry the same weight. And was that to take away the truth of the matter or to corrupt it? I don't have an answer for there. But I think that's interesting. So I thought I'd speak.
Chronically dominant, the left part of the brain. Okay, what happens is the right side of the brain is imbalanced. It's not really functioning at a higher level, okay? And the limbic brain will actually suffer that effect, okay? It will also start to shut down. So you will have a lot of left brain patterns going on and a lot of left brain processing going on. But if that's all that's happening and we're not using this part of the brain equally, the R complex of the brain is what essential executive functions are going to be routed to. We're going to be living from the R complex in a kind of stimulus response only mode instead of living from a holistic brain balanced mode, which is...
Now, my reflection on the symbol and current events actually kind of comes head to head here now, because I think it is the triggering nature of the symbolism that gets an emotional response from the cult of personality, if you will, activist protesters. And is it that we're just broken? That we have been pushed to only honor the reactive side of our nature? Feels like it. A lot of days it feels like it.
When we're in that balanced state, the neocortex, which governs higher order thinking and makes higher order thinking and ethical thinking possible, is what rules the personality, okay? Now, conversely, if the right side of the brain is chronically dominant, so let's put it this way. The left side of the brain being chronically dominant, you have the controller. That's the master mentality. The right side of the brain being chronically dominant, that's the slave mentality. That's the I won't stand up for myself and I'll just accept everything. The total new ager, in other words, okay? So this part of the brain, if it's chronically dominant, the opposite happens with the structures of the brain. The R complex will shut down. It will suffer, okay? It will not work properly, which the R complex is necessary. It makes you stand up for yourself when you're under attack. Again, it's the fight-flight response. In a dangerous situation, you've got to know whether you're going to fight whatever's attacking you or whether you're going to get out of dodge and run away, okay? That's a survival mechanism that's necessary when there's danger. So when this part of the brain is chronically imbalanced, the R complex gets shut down, people freeze essentially, and they don't stand up for themselves and take action. What's happening is they're being ruled by their emotions. And again, the limbic brain governs all emotions, positive and negative. So that's compassion and that's fear. It's any possible human emotion. The midbrain is what's ultimately facilitating that emotion in the physiology. All right? So if this part of the brain is chronically dominant, the opposite happens. You go into slave think, you shut down, you freeze, you're ruled by the emotions, and you don't stand up for yourself. So, the neocortex of the brain has two hemispheres. The left brain largely facilitates logic and scientific thought, while the right brain hemisphere largely facilitates creativity and compassion. When both hemispheres are in balance, the neocortex acts in its proper role as the executive command center of the whole human brain. And that's when true intelligence is born. Now, true intelligence is a concept that I think more people really have to understand. People have equated intelligence with intellect, especially in the Western society, all right? Intellect is not intelligence. Let me say that again. Intellect is not intelligence. Intelligence comprises more than intellect. Intellect is left brain understanding. True intelligence is holistic understanding, with the right brain included in the process, the nurturing, compassionate, creative, and intuitive sides of the consciousness together with the intellectual aspect of the consciousness. And you could see this in the word. Intelligence, right? Intella is where intellect comes from, okay? And gens, G-E-N-C-E, comes from the Latin verb generare. Generare means to generate or to create. So it's the creative aspect of the personality or the right brain. So intellect plus creativity, logical thinking plus nurturing and compassion. That's real intelligence, holistic intelligence. And most people in our society are not in holistic intelligence. They're in one form of brain imbalance or the other. So let's look at how this manifests. If a human being's left brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, The R complex will take over executive function of the brain, and the person will become ruled by selfishness and base desires. And they will develop a personality that is based in domination and control.
We could simplify that. That breaks down to out in the streets right now, the me, gimme, I. On this channel, I believe we talk about it as serving self. Benefiting you and yourself is important. Serving self as your only master, problematic.
Firstly, if a human being's right brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the limbic system will take over executive function of the whole brain, and the person will become ruled by their own emotions and develop a personality that is based in submissiveness and naivete. Okay? The slave think mentality. The schism of the individual. Okay? And this is critical because this is not only a schism within the individual consciousness, it's a schism of worldview, of the way we view ourselves in the world and the way we view our relationship to others in the world. So I call this the mental schism. And it highlights basically what will happen, what kinds of thinking will manifest.
I'll be right back.
When certain types of brain imbalance are present. Basically, what will happen, what kinds of thinking will manifest when certain types of brain imbalance are present. So when we're in this schism, and again, most of humanity is, if we're overly intellectualizing everything and we're too much in the masculine hemisphere of the brain, okay, we're not using the right or intuitive capacities of the brain, the right brain hemisphere. What this can lead to in the world is, again, rigid skepticism. Now, what did we say about that? It's not conducive to learning. People aren't really going to learn when they're rigidly skeptical. This is a hallmark.
Yeah, if it's only what CNN tells you, you might be in trouble. If you have to have the correct face on the person making you think of things, you might be engaged in rigid skepticism.
Mark of scientism. Scientismists, I don't know what other thing to call it, worshippers of the altar of scientism, okay, they have this rigid skepticism because they're purely intellectual. They're not really intelligent. The creative aspect is missing from their personality makeup, okay? Atheism is a hallmark of overly dominant left brain thinking because that, shuns all aspects of spiritual reality. There is no spirit. The universe is a grand cosmic accident. From there you get things like solipsism. People will say, well, isn't solipsism purely left brain? No. It is right brain. I'm sorry. Is it purely right brain? And I say no, it is left brain imbalance as well. Solipsism can be generated from both forms of imbalance, of believing nothing can actually be known. There is no truth.
So, first time through, I took it all in. This is probably third full time I've taken this seminar. And I mean taking it by actually listening. I hope you understand I'm just listening to this for me. Marty is enjoying it as well. So now there we go. The two of us find a little value, and I'm not going to project more into Marty than I should, is telling us thank you for putting it up and watching it. I take that as enough. But that's it. That's all we need. Now, I admit, first time through, I didn't quite understand, and I do see a little, like this time around, this last part really makes sense to me. It didn't matter what side, how the imbalance is taking place, the I am worthless falls into you can be a slave and feel like you're nothing, and you can feel like a conqueror, but because you don't have the whole world, you've lost. You know what I'm saying? Like I finally kind of see that.
You know, truth is a dirty word to many left-brain individuals. You'll note. You know? So solipsism plays into left brain imbalance as well. All of these
I think what I'm really trying to break in to say is I hope Brittany, you're all right. You just pick yourself up and start over. I'm not going to knock you for falling down. And I'll love you even if you quit trying, but I sure hope you don't. This is good part 2 of 3, Brittany. You should probably rewind and sit down again. There was a moment earlier that he mentioned basically we were talking about it last night, getting stuck in the cycle and then not being able to realize that you should run away from the cycle you're stuck in, thus repeating it, creating the never-ending cycle. I really think this part's important, but applying it is a lot more difficult than learning it. And that's the stumbling block. Sorry, you get a slow-moving tractor with, I think they're cutting, interesting, they're cutting the ditch. Very exciting country stuff right there. Oh yeah, cutting the ditch, perfect.
Or to many left-brain individuals, you'll note, you know? So solipsism plays into left brain imbalance as well. All of these states here inevitably lead to these things down here. Moral relativism comes next. The idea that there's no such thing as the difference between right and wrong, that we just get to make those things up. They don't exist inherently in nature, you know? We just...
Now there's one of the core rants of the channel. I believe that's the most dangerous thing we have. And to be fair, it's way more complicated than I think. It's what part of all of this could I grasp a hold of and interject into the channel? Well, a disdain for moral relativism, tippity top of the list. Because this idea that wrong and right is subjective is a load of bullshit. Your favorite music is subjective. Moral and ethical decision making, no, there's not a whole lot of gray there at all. That's the problem. They see it as this just gray area to play in. No, not at all.
Decide on what's right and wrong. The idea that there's no such thing as the difference between right and wrong, that we just get to make those things up. They don't exist inherently in nature, you know? We just can decide on what's right and what's wrong for ourselves and make it up, you know, randomly. So very, very dangerous ideology, which we're going to be talking about a lot. Social Darwinism inevitably comes after that, all right? This is the idea that a certain class of society can get to direct how the lives of everybody else will go because they're the intelligentsia, so-called. Okay,
or let's be honest, let's expand on that, and because they think that their money represents status, I'm better than you, I have more. Really? Really? When we're both down there filling sandbags to stop the flood that will equally destroy my town and your mansion, do you think when the chips are down we're going to be the same people? Because you bought your way to where you were? Now, if you worked your way up there, maybe. But if all you've ever done is tell people how to spend your money, I'm not sure you have any authority at all. Because if it all craps out, your fiat paper bullshit is meaningless. My ability to dig in every day without having to be asked, priceless. And I don't think wanting more is the kind of drive that actually saves anyone. In my personal opinion, all opinions for entertainment purposes only.
Intellectual people really is what it is, the over-intellectualizing, and will direct society because we're the fittest. Like Darwinism postulates the survival of the fittest, well, social Darwinism postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless. And many people believe that's the natural order. They believe that's the natural order, and nothing could be farther from the truth. What that is it's the psychopathic chaos. It has nothing to do with nature, and it has nothing to do with order. It's the exact opposite. So this state, and these are hallmarks of dark occultism as well. Okay? I think I should know a thing or two about it, as I was a priest in it for almost 10 years. I might know a couple of things about Satanism. Okay? So moral relativism is one of the big tenets of Satanism. It's actually one of the pillars of Satanism. Social Darwinism is highly praised and valued in Satanism, and eugenics. Okay? Because if people don't understand what eugenics is basically people, who have gone so deep into this form of left-brain imbalance that they believe they're God and they can get to decide who lives and who dies. That's really what it is. We will control who breeds and who does not get to breed, who gets to...
All right. For anybody interested, this would have manifested itself in the Thanos is right memes. That somehow knocking off half the planet for the better of everybody is a good idea. And if it's random, it's fair. And there are so many people that think that was accurate. Once again, it manifests itself on this channel in the form of the coexist argument. Everyone with a coexist sticker believes in it after they've exterminated their enemies. I want to coexist with these people. Those need to be put in a cage. They don't really want to coexist. They find themselves morally superior as they run around and fillet each other in public at pride events. Yeah, righteous. Now that happens on the other side too with authoritarian control systems. So don't get me wrong, both sides have a bunch of activist losers who push poor ideas to control people. It's frustrating.
Live and who does not get to live. All right? That's essentially eugenics in a nutshell. And again, these are all authoritarianism, forms of authoritarianism. Okay? And it's the idea that man is the author. Man is the creator. Man is the God. Man will make the law. Man will decide who, life and death at any given moment. We will decide what's right and wrong, etc. That's essentially what all of these forms of thought are. Extreme left-brained imbalance. And I was there. I was in this state in my life. I was in it for years. For years. All right? Let's look at the other form of imbalance. If the right side of the brain is...
I was very guilty of this. And I took a minute to think about it. So I believed in a weird, ethical, moral position that other bad guys could be really bad guys. That I was doing some Robin Hood-esque act of righteousness. And all of it filled with violent control. And I was so on this side that I was positive I would teach those bad criminals a lesson. How dare you? How dare you jack up prices? How dare you gouge customers? Now, I never understood why the normies allow corporations to do this. I was just a drug addict robbing other drug addicts. Yeah, it turns out the dealers weren't as ethical as I liked. They seemed to be making huge profit, but they needed to have their inflated self-worth brought down a peg or two. Because once again, they wanted to manifest money. I wanted to honor the will to do whatever I wanted. See, they were focused on the ends. I was focused on the creation process. Cultivating the will to do what they wouldn't. That ended me up in a cage for years. So, trust me, my imbalance worked itself out with lots of years to think about it. And instead of engaging in immoral activity when I was put in the cage, I actually thought about it. And then discovered, like maybe someone we're listening to here, that the control system of my satanic belief system was quite skewed from the reality I lived in. And I learned all that when I was 20. Damn.
Chronically dominant. This leads to, similar kind of imbalance, but in the exact opposite form. The brain is still completely imbalanced, therefore the person's not in a high state of consciousness. They're completely unconscious to what's really going on within them and around them. But the manifestation is generally the opposite of the left brain forms of imbalance. So if you're in real right brain imbalanced state of consciousness, this will lead to naivete, believing anything you're told, accepting things from quote unquote official channels and official sources without actually checking into them for yourself. Blind belief. You'll believe the next religion that comes along. We just have to tell them what they want to hear, and I'll believe that. So, New Agers are basically in this category: naivete and blind belief. People who trust government, of course, are in that category because, again, it's about creating the masters and the slaves. That's what brain imbalance is for, and that's why the controllers want to propagate this imbalance and keep it in place. Again, religious extremism, that's hallmarks of right brain belief, right brain imbalance. Solipsism, no such thing as truth, all from right brain imbalance as well. Feelings of unworthiness, self-loathing, accepting orders from other people, being an order follower. We're going to have a whole section on order followers later and how this is the exact opposite of anything virtuous. For people that believe order following is some kind of a virtue.
And this is what I believe my daughter is stuck in. Hating herself, but believing she's got to do whatever she's told when the time comes, and that people in authority may possibly be right. So, not worthy, just follow, when probably has a better skill set and is more worthy through the trials and tribulations of life she's already lived to ever have to listen to those people. Do you have to play their game? Of course, Brittany, you've got to play their game. But knowing is way more than half the battle. Understanding that they're there to manipulate system the way it is, that's how it's set up. But if you can make peace, that's right. If you can like the person in the mirror, get rid of all the self-destructive tendencies, not switch them to the other side, not one extreme to the other, but balance them. And I was thinking about this. I definitely had a balance, but an imbalance going at the same time, according to this theory. Because I also had self-loathing, self-hatred, fear of success, and other escape. I needed to escape from the family unit because it was a contractual arrangement, not a blood bonding. Right? It wasn't created by them. I just exist with them. And honestly, maybe a couple generations back, that would have been solid. But society wanted me to feel like I was a checkbox because of these facts. And that doesn't help, right? That's the problem. It doesn't help. So then you got both sides firing, but to the negative ends. That's crazy. It's unfair. But I really think, Brittany, you would take a lot away from this whole thing. So if you can take it in and realize, like I said, have an open mind and listen for a bit. There's no answers. There's just universal laws we can figure out and uncover. There's truth to existence if you're willing to accept that. Or that's that shit show rat race you're running right now. And it's a wheel. It just keeps going around and round, kid.
You know, I don't know what to tell you, but it's the thing that leads to all evil in the world, is accepting somebody's orders and not actually gauging for yourself whether the activity, the behavior is.
So every single job I've had since COVID, I have to have the talk. I've had the talk at a plastics plant before COVID to see if their ties to business in China were more important than the town we lived in. Since COVID, it's like, are you going to try to impose false doctrine on me? You going to try to tell me that that's real? I work in a kitchen. I'm like, do you believe in the magical space from the doorway to the table? Do you believe in that? Because if you believe in the magical space theory, I can't do business with you. I will not contract. And that's the power I have. Yep, I might need that job more than anything in this world, but I don't need their fallacy-based system. Yes, there's a magical space, and then you can take it off when you eat. Because magic and profits go hand in hand. No, control systems and propaganda go hand in hand with profit.
Tell you, but it's the thing that leads to all evil in the world, is accepting somebody's orders and not actually gauging for yourself whether the activity, the behavior is moral or not. Okay?
This plastic screen I'm going to work behind, that's a magical barrier that's going to protect me from them. Correct? Oh, okay, I'll take the job because your magic is strong. Come on. So many people went through that and engaged and just pretended. Now, there's some experiments they've run about social settings conditioning people to make decisions. But come on. The amount of people that just went along with these stupid magical ideas. It should be addressed constantly. Because I brought it up every time. I was that asshole in the line. Hey, the air can't go around that. That 2 foot square piece of plastic. No, air doesn't get around that. That seems sealed in to me. You're all acting like that's real. I just want to ask you why. Do you not realize it, or are you too afraid to speak up? Now, I personally can access my fight or flight response areas pretty well.
And it creates a willing slave. This form of imbalance is ultimately generating a willing slave, whereas this form of imbalance is ultimately generating a psychopathic master. And they're all forms.
And I think I'm still stuck, and we'll go to worldview schisms next time. But I'm pretty stuck still because I think I am a willing slave who wants to be locked up to take over the prison and become its leader. And too many movies and too many action songs and too much progressive metal has told me that's possible. Just like the memes. Turns out some of us think we can take the bear. Okay, I don't think I could take the bear or the alligator. I think I could bond with the black bear and get eaten by the polar bear. About it, you know. I would have some misplaced Grizzly Adams approach to it all, but I don't. But it is the position that makes that thing's belief exist. So very interesting. Mark Passio's Natural Law Seminar, part 2 of 3. Oh, that was a good start to Tinfoil Hat Tuesday. I think I'm going to do one more, and then we'll go into some comments and some other stuff and get on with today. But this is just, we're starting out here. That was fire. I hope Brittany, I hope you watched this one, but it was long. So I don't know, maybe I took too much of your time. Passio's only going to take like 3, 6, 9.5 hours to do it. I'm going to take 12. Weird. Hopefully we'll see you back in the next one. Later.